So with episode 3 of Platinum End, we get more confirmation, kind of more into the world mechanics, especially with the powers and the rules that the god candidates have to deal with, which is always a great sign that after 3 weeks, still learning more, and it kind of adds an interesting flavor to the mix, especially because you would naturally think, what if, typical battle royale, what if you like someone in the match? How would you protect them? Would you want to protect them? The idea of being able to transfer abilities over, whether it's, well, you have them under your control, they die, you gain it, or you go kill someone and you pass along the wings and other arrow that characters like Saki may not actually have. And the fact that they didn't beat around the bush with the romance Cupid's arrow plotline, the idea that, he's always loved her, he just happens to say oh shit, here's a twist, wasn't actually the policeman's angel, it was Saki's angel, which is known as Revel. And basically that jump scare moment was simply so that Cupid's arrow could happen, and they even did a 33-day time skip to prove hey, he's still in love with her. Clearly we don't have to worry too much, and we don't have to have this kind of oh, what's gonna happen when he comes out of their spell, when, like you said, at first he had no effect. He's oh, why isn't this doing anything? And then he got to express all the things that he used to kind of lock deep down inside. So for him, despite probably not wanting to be tied up for that long afterwards, it's something that actually allowed him to express his feelings to someone who seems pretty goddamn depressed, and you can understand why someone like Saki probably ended up as a god candidate due to her own suicide attempt and things like that. The one thing I wasn't expecting in this episode was actually that Revel was gonna come out to be a genuinely interesting angel that I wanted to root for. The most interesting rule that I think they revealed in this episode is that the angels can't harm the candidates, though we did see at the end of last week's episode, which then transferred over to the beginning of this week, that basically once, they realize who a candidate is, they can tell their partner, and the partner can harm the candidate. So it's nice that if they do get spotted or something like that, it's not an immediate, they're gonna get hit by an arrow, or they're gonna get transported or something like that. It would be very dangerous, and I think a little bullshit if an angel could say, oh, I spot them, I'm going to carry them to my mentor, my master, things like that. That would be some pretty big bullshit. So the idea of what's clearly a trap, which is setting up into next week's episode, we're getting basically Power Rangers galore here. We're at a baseball stadium. We have our boy not even fazed by the red arrow, which is interesting because I'm not sure exactly how he's doing that. If it's something of his own build, maybe it's some form of force field, or if it's a ability we haven't seen yet, or maybe it's a combination of him firing his own arrow and it's kind of causing a stalemate sort of a thing. It's hard to say, but the fact that 2 of the candidates popped up in very similar costume, I'm curious what's going to happen, because ultimately you can see the first objective for our main character Mirai. He wants to take down this horrible person who's acting like a hero on TV, but is really just doing some scumbag things. And it's interesting that a character like Revel is saying this isn't someone you want to be a god candidate. At first, he was definitely manipulating Mirai because clearly, this boy's going to be able to either A, give his wings and arrows to Saki, or he'll take care of the most dangerous and unpredictable element of this battle royale, and then therefore, she would still get the abilities that they need. But the idea that there's some genuine, there's certain people who do not deserve it, though we're not going to be stupid, they were very much advising not going to it because it's a trap, but they did handle it pretty well, I think, by kind of going at different spots. She was already there when he got there, they're holding hands under a blanket so they're wrapped around, so that basically he can act as our wings, which is another cool fundamental that they revealed in this episode. I think they're doing a great job at laying info, because for someone like Mirai, he's learning as he's going, as will Saki and the others. Though Saki seems to be a little more informed than someone like Mirai, which makes sense given that Mirai is very much pushed back against wanting to even compete in this game of who gets to be God. Though it does seem like there's definitely a divide of what God's going to look like for different angels. We have horrible scumbags playing hero, very much with an angel that probably believes in that, kill, become powerful so I can become powerful, versus the idea of God should at the very least care for people. So I think it'll be fun to see, because do I think someone's about to die? Probably, but is it going to be a character that we've come to know? I don't think so. I think one of the 2 who popped up at the end very well could die, maybe both, but I do think that this objective is an end goal for this first arc. Get her wings, and that might not even happen until an arc or 2 from now. It's hard to say, but they set up enough to make it interesting while actually progressing characterization. Some people probably won't care about the flirty of him gushing and basically revealing all these feelings, but I think stuff like that helps separate someone who would just be, as people might claim from episode 1, edgy, wants to kill himself, to actually starting to become more of a person and living and finding his own happiness. Just unfortunately, that happiness is also tied down to a very brutal death game. And the idea that it probably won't happen, but there's two routes I see this going. Either A, Saki's going to die very early on, which will be devastating and cause a kind of change of revenge. Maybe he'll want to chase after being God. Can God revive? God probably has unlimited powers. Who knows? To two, she's going to last closer to the end of it, and one of those are going to end up dead, either Mirai or Saki. And either way, it would be an emotional gut punch, and it would be interesting to see which of those two directions, because it feels like those are the only two directions I could see it going, unless somehow they find a way to make both of them win somehow. Like, will there be some weird bonding mechanic that allows them? Hard to say, right? Because when you're dealing with gods and angels and essentially demons, by what some characters are acting like, you don't know how far the abilities will be pushed, which actually leads to a lot of speculation, which keeps a show like Platinum End very entertaining for theory crafting and things like that. I mean, I didn't think I was going to have a whole lot to say because I thought this was mainly going to be because I wasn't expecting the 33-day time skip. I thought it was just going to be him flirting and him basically gushing. But the fact that when, Nasse came in and then just them talking, it was an oddly entertaining dynamic that I didn't expect to like. And I think given how he didn't really want to participate to begin with, she very much needs a form of happiness because she was down in the dumps this entire episode. And the idea of kind of like working together until a certain point where most likely Revel will encourage her to kill him because, well, there can only be one victor is probably the way all the angels believe. But ultimately, for now, it makes sense to work together in order to, one, wait out probably a lot of the killings, because, truthfully, if they sat in an apartment for, closer to an entire length of its run or even a year, most of those people will probably be dead, and it'll be a lot easier, though they risk the idea of someone being more seasoned in combat. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. Do you wait and hopefully kill the last two? Or do you basically go about your day and kill who, or attempt to kill anyone who comes near you, and then in return gain experience with basically the wings, the arrows, and the limitations of how far you can push things, right? Because there's bound to be questions you wouldn't think to ask your angel, and your angel wouldn't think to reveal to you, because that situation doesn't come to mind, but the idea of combat experience could really bring about some changes in them. So it's going to be interesting. I mean, the Can't Touch This, I had the song playing in my head when I saw that deflection. I'm very curious. That's probably the thing I'm most curious about entering next week's episode. Though I did like the idea of like the twist of it not being this policeman's angel, but actually his childhood crush, to then the time skip and not wasting time, but still getting that characterization in. Great stuff. I'm really excited for more Platinum End, but as always, let me know your thoughts, feelings down below, your favorite moment, and what do you think is going to happen next week. Leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe if you're new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.